You will get a 2" by 2" piece of linoleum, and this linoleum is fairly easy to carve. It's sort of like carving wood, but it's easier than carving wood. These tools that you'll need to cut the linoleum are called lino cutters or linoleum cutters. And they have a removable blade, but you need to make sure that you leave the blade in place. If you have any problems where the blade breaks off, you're going to need to let me know and make sure that I can replace it for safety reasons. A motif is a design that can be repeated to make a pattern. You'll need to create 4 geometric motifs, 4 organic motifs, and 4 symmetrical motifs. Now I'm going to do one design that I like the most. You need to choose your favorite design, and I'm choosing one of my organic designs. It kind of looks like a wave. Now if you want to slightly change your design, that's fine. You can just draw it onto the linoleum using a pencil. And I'm going to add a couple extra things that aren't on my original paper design. Then I'm going to actually add some shading. I'm going to shade in wherever I'm going to carve away. So the darker areas are the places I know I need to carve, and the lighter areas are the ones I know I need to leave alone. So I'm going to shade all those areas in, and that's going to help me remember which places I need to carve. Next, I'm going to check out the lino cutters and decide which size and shape I need. The wider ones, the scoop ones, are good for taking out a lot. Then there's the more V-shaped ones that have a little bit more of an angle. And I have really small ones that are good for making little small details. And so since I'm just starting out, it's a good idea to start with a larger one, a bigger scoop U-shaped blade. And you always want to make sure that you cut away from yourself. That's for safety reasons. So if in case you slipped, you're not going to accidentally cut yourself. So you need to make sure that you keep your fingers away from the front of the blade, just in case you slipped. It could jab you and could cause a bad cut. So you need to make sure that you don't do that. So there's my first cut using the lino cutter. I'm going to keep cutting away. And I'm always cutting away from myself. I'm never putting my fingers in front of the blade. And you'll see I'm turning the linoleum just to make sure that I am always cutting away from myself and not cutting towards myself. I'm not cutting towards my body or towards my fingers. Now I'm only going to use this larger blade for the larger pieces. The places where it's a little skinnier and harder to get to and harder to carve away, I'm going to use a smaller blade. It's going to be easier to use. It's really important that you don't press too hard and go too deep. You really don't need to cut away very much. So make sure that you start out small. You can't replace the linoleum. You can't glue it back on or anything like that. So if you cut away too much, then you're stuck with what you have. So you need to make sure you're not cutting very deeply, you're not pressing too hard. So I'm using the next size down, and this is going to be more of a V shape, and this is good for getting any smaller details that the larger blade couldn't get to. So like the inside of that little wave motif design that I created, I'm going to use that to cut that out. You want to make sure you get all of the little ridges too. Any ridges that you might have, sometimes they're sticking out after you've done your first cut, so it's a good idea to go back. You can trim the sides of the linoleum tile that you have, so the sides, it's a good idea to just kind of trim those and make sure that you got those taken care of, and then make sure that you get rid of any ridges that might be sticking up. And I'm going to add a few more different details. Even tiny little details can make a big difference. And you want to scoop up and clean up your spot and throw away any of those extra little linoleum scraps. Now you're going to number your linoleum tiles. So put a 1, 2, 3, and 4 on each side, along with your name in the middle. These numbers are going to help us with the printmaking because we're actually going to be using a stamp to print these onto paper, and you'll start out in the number 1 position. So we're going to actually lay the stamp down onto the stamp pad, Make sure that it gets plenty of ink. We're pressing it down so it gets plenty of ink. And you can check on the underside. And I'm going to start with the 1 up. So the 1 is facing away from me. And then I can lift it up. Then I'm going to need to go to the 2 position and put it down on the stamp pad again. And make sure that the 2 is facing away from me, the farthest number away from me. And then stamp in the upper right hand corner. And then I'll go to the 3 position. Make sure that you press down hard enough all over the stamp to make sure you get a good print. And then the number 4 position is the last one. The reason why we rotate these is because it makes a really interesting tile design. So the 4 is facing away from me, and I press it down. You got to be kind of careful that you line it up. You don't need to touch the ink. If you touch the ink, it can smear a little bit, so you got to be kind of careful about that. And it creates a really unique, interesting tile design using the motif that you created. Now there's another step that you can do. You just need to wash your stamp if you choose a different color, but you can take a smaller stamp pad and just kind of dab it on. You only need to ink the places where you didn't carve away. So I'm adding this nice magenta ink, and I'm going to start with the number 1 facing away from me again and press it down. This is a nice bright ink color. Then I'll ink it up again, and I'll print the other 3 parts of the tile. So there's the 4 parts total. Now you can try starting with the number 4. You can start with the number 2. It's up to you. You just need to go in order and keep rotating the stamp as you print it.